make this presentation. The link between the sugar industry and UN's development goals. So allow me to begin with a brief introduction. I'll be looking at some few definitions and a little bit of background information. So as we all know, the sugar industry is a socio-economic venture that has different activities being involved. But the main ones, of course, are agriculture. Then where we have farmers, who are the main stakeholders. Then transport mechanisms where the materials have to get to the industries, and of course the processed goods that have to get to the market. Then we have the eco-processing, where two aspects come in handy: the environment aspect and the factory processing activities. Market and trade, these were the final products that you obtain from the industries get to the end users. What about the United Nations? United Nations have key objectives which have been identified in order to foster humanity. Now, in this case, we find them as the people who are working hard to ensure that the human nature is fostered through development agenda that have been agreed upon. So why the study between these two, the sugar industry and the United Nations? It's because most or both of them address the aspect of human, or the aspect of human beings. And in this case, we look at the social fabric, which is being steered via economic activities. So the next is environmental aspects, where the sugar industry is working to ensure that the environment is taken care of. At the same time, there is the fight or the concern by the United Nations on ensuring that human being and all biotic factors thrive in a clean environment, of course, through what we call clean energy. Then for this to be achieved, there is what we call policy developments and framework, because it involves different people, different states, different continents, and the entire globe. So in that case, for there to be coherence between the activities of the sugar industry and the activities of the United Nations towards achieving the sustainable development objectives, then there should be some form of agreement. And this one only comes through policy frameworks. Why carry out this study? There is increase in population, but change in ecosystem is almost constant or remaining the same. That is, the resources that are supposed to be used by the people who are increasing in number are near the same. So in that case, it is vital, very important for this study to be put into being in order to bridge the gap between the growth in population and available resources that are being produced in order to meet the necessary requirements to sustain livelihoods. Number two, there is an increase in technology and innovations. Now this, of course, it's coming with the two broad implications, the positive implications and the negative implications. So the positive implications were by productivity is increased and productions, of course, go on the rise. But now when it comes to the negative part of it is where human contribution, especially to industrial activities, is being affected. So in this case, you have to strike a balance in order for both industrial activities to continue, at the same time, human activities in terms of economic advantages or economic gains are concerned. So when this happens, when it leads to what we call techno-human friction, because utility of non-human technologies in place where human beings are supposed also to be working. So in that case, it leads to that friction where you find some areas, of course, human output or the human element of work is being displaced. So when that happens, it leads to that what you call techno-human friction. But also, there is need to find a balance. Yes, technology is important, but also human being is important. For that reason, it's very necessary to develop or to strike a balance. Though the study has been carried out, but the scope of it leads to, of course, usage or utility of reports, what we call secondary research. But the most important thing is most of these reports are, the reliability of the reports are of a higher nature. For example, when you talk of the reports from the UN from 2015 to about 2025, before these reports are approved, of course, they understand the rigorous process through which reports are taken through before they are adopted. So as much as it is a limitation by using these reports for the study, the level of reliability of the findings that we have come up with from the study is, of course, high. Another limitation that also had to come up with is the issue of timed objectives. You realize that as much as the sugar industry is working to achieve profits, and the United Nations objectives have been given timelines. In this case, we talk of the Agenda 2030. Here in Kenya, we talk of Vision 2030. So the world is talking about Agenda 2030, where these objectives by 2030 should be realized. Now, in case by that time they have not been realized and yet we have this study, then how will the outcome of this study be of significance? So in that case, if by 2030 we have achieved those objectives, then the implication of the study will be positive. But if it goes beyond 2030, then we'll be limited in one way or the other. So how did we get here? The mechanism of obtaining the results for the study, of course, was determined by several factors. One of it is the complexity, because when you talk of the sugar industry, it's a wide scope. The same thing to United Nations. So, of course, in order to get representative outcome from these entities, then of course you have to approach or to make use of different methods in the study. Of course, another factor that also had to determine the use of course, what we call mixed methods in research is expected outcomes. It's very important to interact with the real world while carrying out research. So that's, of course, what's led to the methods where I had to incorporate different experiences and person-to-person analysis while carrying out the study. Because there was also another issue of time factor, which I think that one I've already mentioned, about vision and agenda 2030. So the mechanism for this study was merely of mixed method, because different approaches had to be put into use in order to get the results. So after carrying out the analysis from the 17 objectives by the United Nations, quite a number of them are applicable in the sugar industry. In this case, I'll look at about 7 of them, which are main. Of course, there are others which the sugar industry is contributing, but not on a higher scale. So look at agriculture, which is main, both in the sugar industry and the UN. Poverty reduction and strengthening of food systems. Economic stability. For both cases, the sugar industry needs to be economically stable. At the same time, the UN is also concentrating in ensuring that the economic aspects of the social fabric is strengthened. Clean energy is mentioned, and it's important because of the aspect of environment. Policy leads to effective collaboration because of the aspect of trade and market availability, identification, and usage. Of course, both also look at the aspect of industrialization. Sugar industry making use of different industries to get its material and also to arrive at its final products. Was the study relevant? Yes. Why? Because of mutual dependence. The mutual dependence for uncertain future calls for cooperation and collaboration. Then support for all industrial players, which is important, especially for the startups. This is a good example that is initiated by the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, which of course encourages industries to come up and make productions. So from the study, it is important to conclude that healthy and peaceful population provides stable market for the sugar industry. Healthy and peaceful population is the main agenda of the UN, and the sugar industry is supported because of that. Then the different producers operate with distinct potentials. Therefore, policy coherence is a source of good collaborations, which leads to stability in trade and, of course, availability of market. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fanuel, for such a wonderful